Now, the rest of the story.
I'm finding I should have wore a hat. So this is the ground that I had hit with the 22B John Deere Ripper. And this is actually one of the problem areas that I specifically knew that I wanted to hit right here. And the ground is hard. I mean, we are getting down in the low 20s at night. But going through and dragging that ripper, this stuff is essentially concrete. But what I'm looking for is giving any rainwater, any kind of water for that matter, a chance to actually get down into the soil and drain away. There are areas of this farm that we could make something of, and this right through here, probably about the end of my finger, all the way to where it starts to curve back and straighten out up there, where the old fence was, over to honestly the hillside. This was a pretty heavy wet area where you really didn't get too brave about trying to get over here this far, and the dry weather is playing into it. But going through, and I know it's probably never, if ever, had any real form of tillage done to it in this way, and my intentions are to make it so I can more consistently make something of this ground, be it essentially hay, because I know there is corn on the other side of the river, but I don't have the willingness to run the risk of trying to grow row crops down here, largely just because we aren't that far from the Mississippi River, and if anything is going to flood, I mean, we're in prime area for it. And what I was really looking for with that ripper, I don't have a coulter on the front that'll slice the soil before that ripper goes through, because if the ground is sliced, it allows that shank to move through the soil easier without so much heaving and creating these chunks of soil that we're getting on either side. And this is actually one of the better areas. We can walk over here. This is one of the areas where I was getting more of the heavy chunks. It was actually up by my truck. But as far as people wondering, what am I going to be doing with these areas of the field that are heaved up like this? Well, I did it in September. It's currently mid-October. I think we're on like the 14th or 15th. And this is just the soil holding that together. But then at the same time, I can't even break it apart. A lot of these chunks are just from years and years of being ran over. That's actually busted out and kind of mellowed out. But really just giving the ground a chance to just be broken open, and it's not just probably a really severe hard pan at this point was I drug that through. But with the big chunks and everything, I have a couple options I can do to deal with this. For the most part, we got all winter. I did this in December last year, or not this, but I came down and did a trial in December last year, and it pretty much did the exact same thing. I'll let it sit all winter, freeze, thaw, kind of break up any compaction. This will actually settle down because we do have a mound up on either side where I pulled that. Then we have a drag chain harrow. Number one, I can come down like late March, early April before anything really starts greening up and smooth this all out. And the grass and everything will come back up through that by June. You won't even be able to tell where I pulled this. I have my tram lines from when I was spraying. Believe it or not, that is, if you can see it, those are my tram lines from spraying throughout the summer. And that's not just from this year, that's from previous years also. Last year, going over it multiple times. So the ground does remember when you're making many passes over the soil. And over on the rest of the bottom where it doesn't hold water and it does have at least a little bit of a gentle slope to it, where a natural slope, where it does drain off. The problem is, instead of draining off back to the river, it's draining off back over here, and there's really nowhere for it to go. I mean, we got, if you went up past the truck, there's a couple low-lying spots right there. That's essentially reclaimed. That's why I made a couple passes up through there just to kind of break it out, break it open. But then you got down through here where I just showed you, that was wet. I mean, basically up until like this past year or so, where I've been able to go through and make it. But then when you get over to where I got the 76 stuck, yes, I got the 76 stuck. I was trying to clean up around that low spot. That is essentially ground that will never, it's a lost cause. There will be no doing anything with it, just because it's like Play-Doh. And the tractor, it sucked the 76 in pretty much within 3/4 of a turn of the tires. The 76 was sunk and stuck, and it took the 82 and 2 of our heaviest log chains to pull the 76 out. It wasn't all so much that we were stuck where like we had that natural, like that suction your rear tires will get when you're spinning the tires, because I knew to stop. The tires were all mud by the time the 82 video got out that Ryan had posted. That was largely because we tried pulling it out with the pickup, because I wasn't that stuck. Ryan came down, we hooked up to the truck, and really I was just looking for the traction. The truck was, I was looking for the pickup to give me enough traction to help get the tires spun around. But that swamp mud back there, it's like Play-Doh. It's weird. It's not dry, it's not wet. It's like Play-Doh. We were going through and we were pulling it out from between the tread on the tires, and quite honestly, you could have dyed it a color, put it in a bunch of old Play-Doh cups, and sold it as Play-Doh, and you would have known the difference. That makes some nasty stuff for trying to pull equipment out of. But with this, I'm hoping that means for first cut, even if we do have a wet spring, I'll be able to come through in June and get as close to 100% of this place made as possible. Like I said, if it doesn't level off at all, especially with these chunks, we got a drag chain harrow. I'll pull out across it, level off all these mounds, these bumps. If that doesn't do it, and it looks like the ground is going to be a little bit bare, which I'm not quite worried about, what I ended up doing last year up on the main field is I had our grain drill down here where I always seed where I stack the hay outside. But, the ground is just inoperable. And I get something growing back in there, I'll drag the grain drill across it, and the blades and everything will help kind of size up any of the dirt. And by next spring, these big nasty chunks, they do pretty well just fall apart, and we'll be set to go. I mean, the big goal is like adding acres, farmable acres, because I'd say on the bottom alone, like down here, I'd say I gained about, of the overall acres that are down here, I was farming maybe 90% of them. And another issue I have down here on these fingers, right there, and this side of that one, there's actually 3 fingers, pretty distinct. And even you could say like up around that waterway and then down where the grass just really isn't that heavy. Yes, something does grow there, but not really what you want to grow there consistently. The green spots are obviously the stuff that you would want. Ideally, you'd come down, you'd tear it all up, and you'd plant a row crop, preferably soybeans for a year to stay away from any of the nasty chemicals that you would grow. But, I mean, because that way you could put in alfalfa or grass or whatever you need to do to try to stay away from that. What I am kind of leaning more towards, if I'd have been on the game a little bit closer here or a lot better after we got done with hay down here, what I should have done, was hook up the disc, came down, and actually went over and hit these once or twice. I mean, tore them up, ripped them up, and came back down with the grain drill and seeded either alfalfa. I get a little bit of an alfalfa mix going down here, or another heavy dose of the Grassmaster I've been using to get a better stand in through there, because that is a product of spraying off all the clover that was in there beforehand. So like down through here, the big heavy nasty chunks, that just tells me how prevalent the compaction was, and you guys can't hardly tell. And I guarantee you by midsummer next year, you won't even be able to tell where the fence lines were, because there were two. And as of right now, I can tell because we got a little hump right here. But this is, I'm not going to say the last update video on the valley for the year, because I'll probably get something up of loading the hay out. But as far as really worrying about doing anything down here until next spring, I'd say we're done. And we're going to let it do what the weather's going to allow it to do. And I'll most certainly give you guys updates going into next year as to what it's going to be allowed to do. So the next real job after this is going to be putting on dry fertilizer next spring. But that's assuming I can afford it. Oh, I ain't talking about prices. I ain't even thinking about what fertilizer's doing right now. But with that, guys, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. It is most certainly fall because I don't have my gloves on and my fingers are pretty well froze. So with that, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe for more Southwest Wisconsin farmer videos. And until next time, I'll talk to you later.